Okay, awesome. Welcome on the hot summer evening. Sounds like the title of a song. Maybe not. Okay. Um, so I'm gonna go ahead and call to order the meeting of the Committee of the Whole for the City of Bloomington. And we are going to start with roll call. Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Kearns,
Present.
Councilmember Bolin,
Here.
Councilmember Mutney,
Here.
Councilmember Dannenberg,
Here.
Councilmember Becker.
Here.
Councilmember Hendricks,
Here.
Councilmember Ward,
Here.
Councilmember Lee,
Present.
Councilmember Crumpler,
Here.
Mayor Millawamble.
Here. Next item on the agenda is public comment. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment? I know we received some on email, right?
Yeah, so we did receive one emailed public comment that came from Karen Irvin and was provided to council earlier today. And then we have 4 registered to speak today in person after your statement.
Okay, sounds good. Public comment is an opportunity for speakers to provide their views and feedback to the city council. It is also an opportunity for the city council to listen to and hear diverse points of view. To maximize the impact of public comment and show respect for the expression of all views, speakers should maintain civility and focus on city issues. Speakers must identify themselves for the record, but are not required to give their address. Each speaker is given the floor for 3 minutes, and the council does not respond or engage in debate. And any speaker that engages in threatening and disorderly behavior will be deemed out of order and their time seized.
All right, so first up, we have Jackie Beyer, and then to follow Tom Kirk.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jackie Beyer. And I just have a few different things that I'd like to speak on. First, I want to recognize the Public Works Department for doing such a great job repairing a crumbling section of Broad Creek Road. Second, the Gun Safe giveaway was a huge success, and I appreciate the opportunity, effort, and intention to offer safes to legal gun owners. I also appreciate the department finally alerting the safe recipients via Facebook and a press release today that the safe is actually not for the guns. So I'm just wondering if there is any liability to the city if someone's gun is ruined by using the safe. And was just curious if the purchase of the fire safes will be will affect the reimbursement from the state for from the violence prevention grant. And then I also just want to, I know that salaries of public servants are always a touchy subject, and I don't know what the procedure would be, but is there any way to increase the salaries of the mayor and the city council members, given the amount of work that you do? Seems like the pay is quite unbalanced compared to the great service that you provide the city. And finally, I just want to say happy Juneteenth for all those that celebrate.
Thank you. Next.
All right, next up, we have Tom Kirk, and then to follow will be Deborah Johnson.
Hello, Tom Kirk. The reason I'm attending the council meetings, and I intend to come to them for 1 year. I think in that time, everybody will have the chance to get to know me, and in return, I'll get to know everybody. I want to present to the city at some point in time, hopefully in the next couple of months, a project that I want to build, for the city and for myself. I want to make sure that this is the right place to do it. I had a great concern over the last meeting when I think what the goal was, for developments to take place, but I think some union, issues got brought into that. And the reason it concerned me was if we're willing to pass on, or even have the conversation of passing on taxpayer dollar to make up a difference, a prevailing wage, that really scares me, it really bothers me. Not only do I need the city to accept what my proposal will be, but I need to make sure that the city is responsible enough to spend the money wisely. And at the end of the day, anything that's a balance or or brought out of balance by city or by government, it's going to be paid for by somebody at some point in time. And then I'm kind of tired of, my taxes going up and whatnot for responsibility that way. So there's a lot of things that I need to know about to make sure that this is where I want to be, and I'm really concerned. So when union issues are brought before you, you need to remember that that union is a business. It's the same as a business. If I threatened you every time you didn't use my services, how would you feel about that? I was concerned, with the comments that Tom brought forth, and I spoke with this one-on-one, so never will I bring an issue by any means of disrespect, but on Andy's job, let's say at High Side, there was 250 people that were going to be on that job. If you use union issue and union pay for the entire project, 3 of you voted no because you wanted to represent your unions over, let's say, 250 people. 5% of all the public, we have 80,000 people, 5% is 4,000 people. 6% or 8% was 6,000 people. You guys are making decisions and voting for 6% of the population, where let's say 90% of the population is going to have to pay the bill on what it is that you believe in. So I've got a strong opinion of that because I live it, I feel it. At the end of the day, whatever my expenses are, I have to make the same amount of money, and all I simply do is pass the bill on to those that are underneath me. I have to make the same amount of money. So your influence to help some people is going to offset and hurt so many other people. So I'm out of time. Thanks.
Thank you. Next.
All right, next up, we have Deborah Johnson, and then the last one will be Serena Fish.
Ooh. Is there? Okay. Yeah, we can move the microphone to her. It's a handheld, right? Can she? Yeah, okay. Can she speak? Yeah, does she have it in writing? Okay.
So I would say you can't forfeit it, but I could.
Okay, got it.
Okay, how about that? Okay, so what we'll do actually is,
Let Serena go first.
yeah, we're gonna call Serena first and then
Okay.
give her a moment, if that's okay.
Hello, my name is Serena Fish. I think you all know that by now. I live in Ward 6, next door to another Ward 1. I have 2 things I want to speak about. One is on the initiative proposal to create a special commission to develop a comprehensive plan to address the issue of gun violence locally. I've spoken before numerous times about this. We have a commission. It's called the PSCRB Board. That stands for Public Safety Community Relations Board. If any of you would attend meetings or know some of the things that we do, we get regular reports on how many calls, we get reports on all the things that are going. I'm sorry, you okay? I'm sorry. Part of our family here, so. Use of force. Right now, June 1st, out of May 5,992 calls. As of June 1st, 4 have risen to a complaint status. 99.7% of the calls that the police department gets Don't call for service, don't call for force. They're resolved. Or it's something that's very, our current police chief with the $500,000 grant he got has moved many things into place, which has made it already a better community, catching people much quicker with the flock cameras. And I see no reason at this point, because you're talking about a mental health issue more than anything, than you are actually gun violence. And we have a very good board and we have a very good police force. Let's use them. Numerous times we've been added on to another task by Mr. Gleason. Happy to do it. But please do not start stretching this out all over the place. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Do you, should she probably should stay. She can stay, no?
I'm fine, thank you, and I do apologize.
No, that's okay.
Not very many things stop me in my tracks, but with my mouth, but I do appreciate it. Hi, my name is Deborah Johnson. I'm Ward 4. I wanted to present to you an proposition. I wanted to talk to you guys about this very special day, Juneteenth. Today is the celebration of our Juneteenth. We haven't been in existence too long as far as celebrating this special day, but it is a federal holiday and it is a state holiday. And I am standing before you at this moment because I guess I'm kind of overwhelmed by this because it means a lot to me. To amend your ordinance. Ordinance for your council meetings in Article 2-203, Chapter 2, Section 15 talks about your regular committees and on holidays and special occasions, you will have your meetings. If it falls on a Monday, you will have it on a Tuesday. I would like to amend this article, article number, paragraph C, in which right now your committee of the whole committee that we're in right now, I would recommend that we amend that to be consistent with your regular meetings. This committee meets on a Monday, which is the third Monday of each month, and that Monday happens to be a holiday, I think you should think about postponing this meeting until Tuesday, because it should be consistent with your regular meetings and it will sacrifice. I apologize, I'm kind of all over the place today, but that article should be consistent with your regular city meetings. There's only 3 holidays that fall in for the entire year. In January, there's Martin Luther King's birthday. We celebrate that. That's a federal holiday. It's the 3rd Sunday of each month of January. We have President's Day in February. It falls on a Monday. We have Juneteenth. It falls on a Monday. If you would consider taking the time to amend it, where only 3 months out of the year, you would consider amending your days to have your council at large meeting, council of the whole, meeting on Tuesday instead of Monday. I think it would be a great service to our community and to the people who the Juneteenth represents. And one last thing is that if that would take place, we would not be here tonight. We will be here tomorrow night. Thank you so much for your time.
Good, thank you.
There's no further public comment.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. And do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, which only includes minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Okay. Okay, motion by Councilmember Bolin, second by Councilmember Becker.
We'll just do a quick roll call since it's
Roll
just
call.
the one.
Okay.
Councilmember Kearns,
Yes.
Councilmember Bolin,
Yes.
Councilmember Motney,
Yes.
Councilmember Dannenberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Becker,
Yes.
Councilmember Hendricks,
Yes.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Councilmember Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Crumpler.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that passes. No nays to announce. We're gonna move on to the regular agenda, a presentation and discussion of the Public Works Water Capital Improvement Plan as requested by the Public Works Department. And I'm gonna turn it over to City Manager Gleason for some initial remarks.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Very brief comments as we kick off this conversation on our water master plan. And in fact, this is not a kickoff. This is a continuation of the 2019 master plan. This truly is a big deal, and hoping that the community is watching because this is that high level conversation, the next steps in the 2019 master plan. Kevin Cothe is going to cover a fair amount of ground. In a lot of areas that he's going to speak to tonight will become individual conversations. We've prepped council for this day, and this is the very first public conversation. Also in attendance, we have Assistant Public Works Director Bob Yale, and then we have, what's your title, Brett? Water Operations Manager, Brett Lucian. Kevin, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, City Manager, Mayor, and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you tonight about our capital improvement plan. This will be, as the City Manager said, a high-level, big picture overview of our 20-year capital improvement plan. I want to recognize our Public Works team for all the work that they did putting this presentation together. It's not just about me. It's about a great group of people I have behind me that are behind the scenes working hard every day to bring safe drinking water to our residents. So next slide, please. The outline for tonight is really a history overview of our water system, and then the capital improvement planning process, the components, talk about a rate study and the next steps and tentative timeframe. The picture you see there is of the Division Street pump station in the background. The foreground is a stone sign that is from the original waterworks for Bloomington from 1875. Something that was saved. The original plant is not there any longer, but that stone was saved from it. So just a neat historical fact. Next slide, please. So we'll be doing a quick overview of the city's water system and history. Next slide. All right. Did we skip a slide? There we go. Thank you. This timeline is a little bit hard to read, but just want to outline for you some key milestones. This certainly isn't everything of the city's water history, but the city goes back to 1830s. The water system really begins in 1875 with construction at Division Street of some wells, a pump house, and a standpipe that was located just kind of south of the original waterworks. And by 1906, the Division Street Reservoir, 10 million gallon reservoir, was constructed. 29 was when the water treatment plant, Lake Bloomington, that whole facility was all constructed and brought online. We switched at that time from well water to lake water, and much more reliable source of water for the community. In the 50s, there was an expansion of the plant and another transmission main to Bloomington. And then with the 50s, some more water was needed to raise the spillway at Lake Bloomington to provide for a bigger reservoir. Some modernization. Late 60s comes Evergreen, and also some new sludge lagoons. So obviously having a second lake made a big difference as the city grew. And then in the seventies, we got the Fort Jesse pumping station towards the east side and the 2 million gallon storage tank. In the seventies, some other water treatment plant improvements along with transmission main to the city. And then in the late seventies, some of you will remember, we had severe drought, and not only did we bring online the Enterprise Zone pump station to serve the west side and some expansion, but we also got the N89, the Mackinac River pumping pool, which helped provide some supplemental water where our lakes were getting really low, and really helped save the day in those years. And then nineties, we had some additional storage at Fort Jesse and some additional pumpage at Fort Jesse, Division Street improvements. And then Evergreen was raised in the nineties to provide for more water there as well. And then some other expansions of the transmission mains and new elevated tank by I-55, all part of a bigger master plan to update the water mains from Lake Bloomington and provide better for the community in the future. And then more recently, we had some other expansions of the transmission main. Over all this history, there was water rate increases from time to time. The last water rate increase was in 2012, so we've gone quite a ways without that. From 2004 to 2019, we focused mainly on maintaining the system and minimizing costs. And then, of course, here lately in the 2019-2020 timeframe, water infrastructure master plan was approved by council. So just a quick overview of that. Next slide, please. I think we skipped one. Go back one. Oh, was it the one before it? Maybe it's out of order. Go one more back. The other back. One more back. Okay, I must got out of order. My apologies. By the numbers, we have one water treatment plant, one pumping pool, 2 reservoirs, 5 pump stations, 6 storage tanks, 450 miles of water main, close to 5,000 fire hydrants, 34,000 plus meters, serving about 86,000 residents of McLean County, over 77,000 in Bloomington, but we also serve some other communities like Towanda and Hudson. Our water supply provides those communities with water as well as Bloomington Township. Our pumpage for May 22 to March 23 was 11 million gallons average per day. Okay, forward, I think 2 slides. I'm sorry, got out of order. So this is a map of the facilities we have, and starting up at the north of Bloomington Normal, we have our lakes, Lake Bloomington, Evergreen Lake, the Mackinac pumping pool. The water treatment plant is at Lake Bloomington. Water is pumped from Mackinac into Evergreen Lake under certain conditions, pumped from Evergreen to the treatment plant, and then to town. Is the finished water is supplied down Pipeline Road and goes to our facilities in town, which are some of the key facilities are highlighted there with pump stations and elevated tanks. And that water is then stored, pumped, and delivered to customers through these different facilities. Next slide, please. This is a slide that many of you have seen before. It shows the annexations to Bloomington over the decades. So in the middle, you see the light purple. That is really what the city was from, basically the 1850 to 1950. And then from there, the city continued to grow. Both east and west and south is a different color show, but a lot of it was focused to the east. And of course, as the city grew, the utilities had to expand to serve the demand. And that's what you kind of saw in that timeline, was a lot of the growth over time and expansion of the water supplies, of the treatment facility, and of the pump stations. Next slide, please. The map here is a dot map representing water meters. And so what's interesting about this is the color and the size of the dot represents the consumption. And so you can see that there's consumption throughout the city that has grown to the east and to the west and south as well. What's interesting about this is that if you drew a center line, a north-south line, where consumption was equal to the east and equal to the west, that line would be roughly Mercer. What's interesting to note about that is the original facilities were all, at Division Street, just west of center, but you could see in the other map that we just saw, the original city, the waterworks were well centered for the community, but as the community has grown, it's not necessarily well centered. And we'll mention that as we get into some of what we have in the master plan. Next slide. This is going to provide an overview of the capital improvement planning process. Next slide. Over the years, there's been a lot of studies and reports. The 20-year capital improvement plan builds on those previous studies, expands on it. And we have in these studies everything from water treatment plant improvements to water supply to infrastructure master plan to distribution system planning. The 2019 water infrastructure master plan was started and finished in about a year, approved by council in 2020. And that really is the basis for our 20-year capital improvement plan, but more has been added on top of that as studies continue. Next slide. This shows some different inputs, components that were considered as part of the 20-year capital improvement planning that we did. And you can read them for yourself, but there's a lot of things that went into that plan. Next slide. Things haven't stood still. We had 2019, 2020 approved master plan. We started working as staff. We started working on the items that were listed there. And so to date, we've already have either completed or in process 68 of those items from that 2020 plan and over $9 million either completed or under contract, including everything from water. And when you see WTP, it means water treatment plant, the buildings and grounds improvement. We've had pump station, building grounds improvement, water treatment plant, settled water piping, cleaning and replacement, chlorine gas scrubber improvement sets at the plant, ammonia feed improvements at the plant. Hamilton Road elevated tank, we finished repainting that just a little over a year ago. Fort Jesse ground tanks are being repainted right now. The first one was finished last year. The second one's in works right now. Water treatment plant, flow meter replacement, pump station, electrical improvements, SCADA upgrade. SCADA is supervisory control and data acquisition. That's a system that allows us to monitor and control the not only the water treatment plant itself, but also our overall distribution system. And then we had various items as well. So you can see that there's been a lot in the works. It's not just waiting for stuff to happen in the future. We've had stuff going on all along, but now we're to the point where we've got a big master plan, and the picture kind of shows that, illustrates it for you. The small document in the middle is the 2019-2020 water infrastructure master plan, but the document it sits on top of the big spreadsheet with colors, that's our 20-year capital improvement plan with a lot of detail on it. And then underneath to the right is some old construction plans for some of our water facilities, and behind everything is a map of Lake Bloomington. So just gives you a frame of reference of how much has gone into where we're at today. Next slide. So what are the components of the capital improvement plan? Next slide. We have really 5 main categories that we want to hit on tonight. And that these 5 categories, as we walk through the next slides, we'll talk about those in a little bit more detail. Next slide. First one is the system-wide improvements project timeline. Back in January of 2020, Division Street Enterprise Pump Station Planning Study was approved by council. We had a consultant working on that. And then in July of 2020, the master plan, that 2019 master plan was approved by council. In January 2021, we had an amendment that was done for the Division and Enterprise Pump Station Planning Study. to consider alternatives for those two pump stations. The Division Street pump station obviously is at Division Street. The Enterprise pump station also happens to be at Division Street. But when you look at investing the millions and millions of dollars to replace those facilities, the question became, should those facilities still be located there ideally? Given, you saw the map and the growth to the east and where our demands are. And the study came back and said basically that, yeah, the Division Street pump station, it doesn't make sense to continue to be there. It's not as efficient for pumping. It's not as efficient for providing good water quality. And we ought to be considering locating that elsewhere in the system. And we'll look at a map here shortly, kind of give you that overview. But we moved on then in April of 22 to start design of improvements, preliminary design of the system-wide. And we've been ongoing with that planning now. And then coming later this summer will be in addition to the contract to be able to provide more design work for the system-wide. The system-wide includes a number of things. It's not just a one location or one item. It's a bunch of items. So next slide. This map is an overview of our pressure zone. So a pressure zone is an area of the city that is served by equal what they call hydraulic grade line. That's a fancy word, but the pump stations that are in these zones and the elevated tanks serve those zones. And you may not think about this, but even though Illinois is pretty flat, there is some relief to Bloomington. And so elevation plays a role in how much pressure you have at your home. And so as you head west, generally elevations go lower. And so the pressure needs to be adjusted for those zones accordingly. So you can see that the biggest one, the purple one, is the Hamilton pressure zone. And that's where most of our consumption is. It's where most of our pumpage is. But that's not to neglect the Enterprise zone or even Heartland Hills, which is a reduction in pressure because it's even lower, or the South Main pressure zone, which is a booster. The system-wide distribution improvements looks at all these zones and looks at facilities that need to be included there to optimize not only the delivery of water, but to provide redundancy. Elevated tanks provide a level of redundancy and safety in addition to our pump stations, because we want to have multiple points of redundancy. If something goes down for a little bit, we need to have a backup, and the elevated tanks provide that and an evening of the pressure in the system. So that's kind of a quick overview of the need for that system-wide distribution improvement and proper placement of the facilities for what we have today and looking to the future. Next slide. Another component is lead service line. That's been in the news a lot. Obviously, there's federal and state laws and rules that have been put in place. On the right side is a quick overview of Illinois rules that say when we have to have inventories turned into IEPA, the Illinois EPA, and also when we have to have a facilities plan in place. We're working to meet all the targets, and we did turn in an updated inventory on April 15th of 23 as required. Final inventory is due next spring on April 15th, as well as a initial replacement plan. And so as things progress, if we find lead service lines when we're digging and disturb them, we replace them. We're providing the notices required to customers to let them know they have a lead service line. We're also doing more evaluation and planning to put together the plan for next year that we need to turn in, and assembling service line inventory information as we find it. We continue to do water quality testing. We have a number of places where we know there's lead service lines. We test the water on a regular basis. And then we need to provide additional tracking mechanisms, because as we replace lead service lines, we not only have to track that we did it, but also the costs involved. So there's a lot of parts and pieces. There's a lot more to come on this, but just wanted to scratch the surface on this one so you're aware that we are complying with the federal and state laws as we move forward as a water system. Next slide. Water treatment, meters and water main replacement. These are key components of any system. you have to have good water meters that are accurate, and we routinely replace them on a regular basis. And the fixed point meter reading system, the top left picture is a picture of the top of Hamilton Tank, where we have a fixed point collection point. We don't have all the meters in the city on fixed point yet. We're working towards that, which will make getting meter readings much simpler and easier. We also replace water main as needed, and you can see in the slides some examples of the pictures of water main replacement as well. Next slide. The Lake Bloomington treatment plant, some overview pictures there. You see an aerial exterior picture of the plant, some of the interior pictures, including clear cones and filter galleries, and doing regular maintenance there. But this is all some upgrades are included in the 20-year capital plan as well for that. Next slide. The lake maintenance and watersheds, it's important that we maintain the lakes so that we can reduce in the wetlands in the lower left that helps to filter out nutrients and chemicals like nitrates, helps to keep the water cleaner as it enters the lake. The lower right, we have some stone riprap that's placed to prevent erosion and stop sediment from getting into the lakes and filling them up. We also have some natural prairie up there that we burn annually with a prescribed burn. You can see that in the middle. And then upper middle is lime sludge removal. We use lime for our treatment softening process. And that lime sludge is placed in lagoons that are emptied out and used for farmers' fields in the fall. And then, of course, we have some public outreach where we reach out to stakeholders and let them know about our watershed master plans and how we can partner with farmers and landowners to reduce runoff that gets into the lakes and causes us problems. Next slide. Rate study. There is a current rate study under contract. Next slide. The goals of that is to sustainably fund our operations and capital improvements, improve equity and affordability. We'll have information opportunities with the public outreach committee, council discussions, presentations coming, public meetings, and project microsite and press releases. Quick overview of that. Next slide. The city's been looking and monitoring rates across Illinois. So this is a graphic that shows some other, the Bloomington is on the left, and the other cities throughout central Illinois. This is from January of 23. The dark blue band is the charge for water usage by the meter. The top part, the lighter blue, is a fixed cost, monthly fixed cost. This is based on residential consumption of 600 cubic feet or just under 5,000 gallons. And you can see from the red line that we are in the lower tier of communities in central Illinois. The notes at the bottom a little hard to read, but this includes Champaign, Urbana, Danville, Decatur, Normal, Peoria, Rockford, Springfield, Washington, Morton, East Peoria, Pekin, Quincy, Rock Island, and Galesburg. But you can see that our rates are among the lower of the neighboring communities. Next slide. Another graph that shows this is a study that was done by Burns and Clancy and Associates, and they surveyed 115 communities in central Illinois. The labels on this don't include all the bars on the line, but once again, you can see where Bloomington falls within that group, and we are at that lower tier of communities as far as the cost. Next slide. So next steps and tentative timeframes. What will the council see next? Next slide. This summer, as I mentioned, we want to bring back a design contract to continue with the system-wide potable water distribution improvements. Also this summer, we want to get a consultant involved to help us finish out the inventory and help us with the development of the lead service line program, which all that is due next April 15th of 24. We're also looking towards the summer or fall of 23 for a presentation and additional information on our rate study that's ongoing. And then towards the fall and the winter of this year, a construction contract for Meadowbrook subdivision. Many of you remember that we have a design consultant involved. This is a project that's been in the works for several years. And the Meadowbrook subdivision, which is down, north of Lafayette and basically east of Morrissey, that subdivision has had infrastructure needs, both with, sidewalk and curb and roads, but also the water main there is in serious need of replacement. So obviously we want to get the underground stuff under contract first and then, finish with repairing the infrastructure above. And we want to bring a contract, get it out for bid and bring a contract for award this fall or winter. And so those are kind of the next steps that the council will be seeing as we continue to move this process forward. So next slide. Thank you, Mr. Gleason.
Thanks, Kevin. I guess to the community, council knows this already with just sort of the preparatory conversations that we've had. I'm excited. I do truly get excited about this kind of stuff. When we talk about our water utility, our water infrastructure, there are many communities across the United States that would truly kill to have what we have as a resource in this community. And it's been managed extremely well over the 150 years, nearly 150 years that we've had this as a water resource. I wanted to jump into Kevin's presentation a few times and just say, put a pin in this. We're going to be talking more about this. But there are so many conversations that are going to occur throughout the remainder of this year. And they are big conversations. I'm going to say what I've said before about this council that's seated. This is probably the top of the list when we talk about some of the very important, not necessarily a tough decision, because we hope to be able to present to council, the whys in all of this and the need to improve our water infrastructure. But it's going to be tough because this is going to cost the community quite a bit, and we'll get into those numbers in the very near future. But it's an exciting conversation. I'll shift just slightly before we turn this to council. We've hired a lobbyist. So earmarks was the very first thing that we looked at and knew that we were going to be shifting to this conversation. And the deputy city managers have already started those conversations with the lobbyists, where we're looking at what kind of grants, what kind of low interest rate loans, what kind of loans might have a forgivable component to them, because this is going to be quite costly. But we will put council on firm ground and then educate the community as best we can in many, many talking sessions that will be coming up. And, truly, this was that kickoff conversation, even though quite a bit of work has been occurring since 2019, 2020, different components. I think 68 are already completed or in play up to this point. So this is a big deal for the community. Thanks, Kevin. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions? Councilmember Monty.
Well, thank you so much. And you really are a scholar and a historian on this topic. I'm reminded of the time I spent with you looking at the archives, and it was wonderful. So thank you for that. The rate structure. I know you mentioned that the water rates haven't increased since 2012. I'm curious what the average water bill was in 2012, and if the consumer here, the resident here, would feel an increase. So what the average water bill would have been in 2012 and what the average water bill is today.
So I don't have that in front of me right now as far as the water bill component, but we haven't had a rate increase. So assuming that they're using the same amount, the water component of the bill would be the same. But the city of Bloomington utility bill includes more than just water on it. So, we have on there, for refuse charges, your garbage. We also have the sewer, sanitary sewer. We also have a binward charge, right? So the city charge for sewer is for us to maintain our sewer system. but the Bloomington Normal Water Reclamation District charges for treatment of the sewage. That's a separate charge. We do collect it on our utility bill, but that's turned over directly to the sanitary district. And then we have the stormwater charge, which is another charge that's assessed for stormwater runoff and maintaining our storm sewer system. So all those other fees on that utility bill have increased. They have, a lot of them have a 3% per year automatic adjustment. The water does not. So
I think it would be very helpful for me to see the rate structure in the context of all of those other things that are included when people get the bills. I know there's a perception of increase and, you know, that certainly explains it. So as we think about messaging, when we talk about this in isolation, I think it could be misconstrued. When the consumer, the residents here are seeing this in the context of all of those other fees and things that are related to water management.
yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Good questions. Wow, we have strong silent types here today. No, you don't have to. I'm just kidding.
Thank
Go
you,
ahead.
Kevin.
Thank you, Don.
Okay, so one quick question I have for you, Kevin, it just in terms of, I know we make a lot of decisions, you know, at council about growth and economic development and things like that. So what do you see in the future in terms of our water capacity? Are we okay? Do we need to add more water, have another water source? Or I know that's been part of the conversation in the past. Just wanted to get your take on that.
Yeah, it has been part of the conversation in the past, and we continue to look for the future in terms of you know, water supply and what might be needed. There's been some test wells that have been placed up by Lake Bloomington to see what type of well production might be able to supplement up at Lake Bloomington. There's some different issues that have come up with those wells. We have not pursued development of that at this point. As far as right now, we've been doing well with our water supplies. Last year, we were kind of in a drought situation where between the two lakes, we got down below 8 feet below, you know, their normal pool elevation, which at that point, our permit for the Mackinac pumping pool allows us then, we have to, you know, apply to the state and the Corps of Engineers to be able to activate and start using the pumping pool. But we actually did use it again last year because our lakes got sufficiently low. We were able to pump quite a bit out of the Mackinac River and supplement our water supply in Evergreen Lake. Over the course of the winter, our lakes traditionally fill up, and they did again this year because obviously when the ground is frozen, everything runs off and comes to our lake. During this time of year, if it rains and it's so dry, chances are it's going to be all, you know, absorbed by all the farmland that contributes to our lake. So we won't get as much runoff, obviously, if we get some rain. Right now, our lakes are down a little bit. Evergreen is really, we haven't been pumping out of it that much. Bloomington is down a little bit right now, but we've been doing well with our water supply. And then as far as our you know, treatment capacity at 11 million gallons a day, we potentially have more than double that available at our plant to produce finished water. So always monitoring and keeping an eye on those things. And the water master plan has, you know, some things in there, but right now, as far as our water supply and treatment, we're in pretty good shape.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Hendricks.
I just had a quick comment. To say, one, I appreciate this, and I look forward to having these discussions. Those who may know, I came from Pekin when I grew up, and I was on the Pekin City Council there, and we had a private water system, and it really tied our hands often when we had issues from constituents and others who would come forward and need help with different water issues. And as somebody who sees water as a public good, I appreciate that we as Bloomington have a public water system and are able to have these conversations. And that also puts the responsibility on us to make these tough decisions. But I'm thankful that we get to make those decisions. So thank you.
Okay, well, doesn't look like there's anybody else. So thank you so much, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you all.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is council member initiatives and a discussion on council member Ward's agenda initiative proposal to create a special commission to develop a comprehensive plan to address the issue of gun violence as requested by the city clerk department. And I'm going to turn it over to City Manager Gleason for some introductory remarks.
Very brief comments, Mayor and Council, as the floor belongs to Alderwoman Ward on this. This was a council initiative that was first brought forward, would have been February, Committee of the Whole 2022. And it has had varying types of conversations. And we are going to hear and look at what the next steps for staff are. Molly.
Great. Thank you for that brief background, City Manager, and for the opportunity to offer some further perspective on this issue. Gun violence is now the #1 killer of children and teenagers in the United States. The #1 killer. And the report we heard just a few weeks ago by our chief of police makes it clear that instances of gun violence, weapons violations, and suicide by gun are a concern in our own community of Bloomington as well. Moreover, although my interest in addressing this issue is rooted in the experiences of my constituents, and indeed myself and my own family, it's also clear that this is not just a Ward 7 or West Side problem. And I am grateful that city staff have indicated as much on the cover sheet of this agenda item. That said, I would like to address several of the questions that have been raised since I first introduced the idea of a special commission on gun violence over a year ago. Question number 1, what would this commission do that isn't already being done by other groups? First off, it would collect data that are now scattered so that we can begin to identify patterns. These data are scattered through various websites, through various groups throughout the community. They exist, this is correct. But these data are scattered in such a way that they can't usefully help us to understand what the patterns are. For example, suicide figures don't appear on the Bloomington crime map, nor are they formally tracked by the Bloomington Police Department. There's nothing wrong with that. That's not a criticism of the police department. Suicide isn't a crime. But those are instances in many cases of gun violence. And somebody needs to be pulling all the threads together to see what patterns we can begin to identify. Another thing that this commission would do that isn't already being done is to make comprehensive recommendations based on those patterns so that we can set targets. Again, for example, the gun safe giveaway that we had at the farmer's market using the grant money from the state was wildly popular. And based on the after event inquiries, we easily could have given away probably twice as many safes from what I've been told. So had we done this kind of study ahead of time, we might have known that and been able to target our efforts. Another thing that this kind of commission would do that isn't already being done is to allow us to have the kind of shovel-ready ideas that we could have used when resources do become available, sometimes with very little notice. For example, again, the quick turnaround time that pushed us to come up with ideas for how to spend the state funds. Had we done this commission a year and a half ago, we would have had those shovel-ready ideas at hand. Another question, why couldn't this just be handled by the Bloomington Police Department, the Behavioral Health Coordinating Council, the Public Safety and Community Relations Board, or some other existing agency? Well, for one reason, gun violence does not just stem from one source. So it's not reasonable to expect any one group to have all of the answers or to be the expert on all things. For example, again, suicide, which is not a crime, accounts for a significant number of gun deaths. But not all instances of gun violence are related to suicide or mental illness. So who owns that one? Another reason why the existing groups shouldn't be dumped with this issue is that handing it over to a group not specifically designed for it runs the risk of the work itself being watered down or distracting from the group's other important mandates. Another question that's come up, what would this commission look like? I've created a template. It's been circulated among the community and among council members. It's based on the work that other city work groups do. The template is very simple, similar to those models. It's been vetted by various stakeholders and it's out there. Another question, why do we have to call this a special commission? Well, the simple answer to that is we don't. While I believe this name lends appropriate gravity to this issue, it's not a deal breaker. Let's not allow semantics to get in the way of getting something done. Another question, isn't this just a way of trying to take our guns away? No. 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 It's about drawing on the wisdom of our community in the specific context of our community and hearing recommendations based on that wisdom and context. This commission would be made up of representatives of a variety of stakeholder groups, ideally including gun owners. The gun safe giveaway is a great example of one recommendation that has nothing to do with taking away guns. It's simply about allowing gun owners to have a safe way to store their weapons. And then finally, another question, won't people be afraid to move to Bloomington or do business in Bloomington if they hear we have concerns about gun violence? On the contrary, I actually think we're smarter than that. Rather than a city that sticks its collective head in the sand, we would be seen as a forward-thinking community that is committed to the idea that even one gun death is too many. That's the kind of place I would love to live and work in. And now is the time to make this happen. Thank you. I'd take any questions.
Okay, thank you. So we have Councilmember Crumpler to start with. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilmember Ward, for that introduction. You know, I support this commission. I think it's something that would benefit this community. One thing I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about, you know, I worry sometimes about what I'm just going to say, the process of commissions. It takes a while to form them, to get them in place, for them to, you know, decide on what their priorities are. And I wonder how you would feel about setting a pretty strict timeline for this commission so that as a council, we have some expectations. Perhaps there's some reporting of how things are going along the way. So it's not just something that, you know, we say, go form this and then not have any accountability or a sense of what's going on. You would comment on that, please?
May I?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for raising that, because that's one of the beauties, I think, of it being called a special commission. That very issue is one of the prime things that I address in the template that I've created. I don't see this as a never-ending kind of commission. I see very concrete, clear mile markers being put in place for when we want reports back, when we want recommendations, how long this commission would exist. It would be up to us as a council to decide after that time period whether we would want to make this something more ongoing or not. But what I'm envisioning is something that would be very discreet and time sensitive, because I see this as an issue that shouldn't just be a never-ending process.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Motley?
When we discussed this in 2022, Peoria and Champaign-Urbana area were given as examples of these forward-thinking communities that have such groups. What have been some of the outcomes that they've been able to achieve in those communities? And as you described, getting something done, how has that worked out for them?
So Councilmember Motney, I'm not sure that I recall saying or recall who would have said that Peoria and Champaign-Urbana were forward-thinking communities that have gotten something done. I've heard them referenced as having a significantly serious problem with gun violence. That's the reference I've always heard them make. One thing that I will say is that I've recently seen a plan that has come out of Champaign, I believe it is, that has been very concrete and specific and comprehensive, saying these are our goals for reducing gun violence here. And that, I think, what came out in February, I believe it was. So I don't know what the results are. I don't think they've had a chance yet to show what the results are.
So they have had these commissions though for quite some time.
I don't know that they've had commissions to such as what I'm proposing.
So, okay, so just to kind of understand what our hypothesis is as to why we would need this. I mean, as you've looked at those communities, because I think they were mentioned in 2022 as examples of other communities that had similar commissions. What do you think did not lead them to perhaps get the results they were hoping for?
I can't speak for those other cities. And again, I'm not sure what you're referring to, who's lifted them up as models.
Okay. And then just following up on the collecting scattered data in this community, I'm just interested in understanding what the uniqueness of the data would be in our community. And because we are blessed with, I agree wholeheartedly, one is too many, but our numbers are pretty low. So we would be talking about qualitatively analyzing this data. I'm just curious if you could share more about how you think that data would be leveraged uniquely, such that Bloomington alone would need their own commission. I recall from the prior discussion and had notes about the dialogue that perhaps this could be more regional, but I know we landed with it being just within the boundaries of Bloomington. So I'm just trying to understand the context of that.
Yeah, so the short answer to some of that is we don't know yet. That's the point of the commission. We don't know what makes us unique. At this point, we haven't got the data collected so that we know whether X% of the instances of gun violence are related to X issue. We don't know. That's the point, because I would like to be good stewards of our resources and frankly, would like to be responsible city council members in the way that we address this, and not just throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks, but rather to base that on data that we've got to look at. So I don't know the answer. That's why I'm calling for this commission. And I have been told for years, it's not just one source that is causing the gun violence. It's not just one particular demographic or one particular social issue or one particular cause. So let's figure out where the preponderance is and deal with that proportionally.
And what would you see as outcomes from this? I know you've given the example of the gun safe and, you know, from writing down, you know, last year, the potential outcomes, some of them have already been followed up on. I'm just curious, like, what would you see as an outcome? And there's an assumption there too, that the data that someone like, for example, Jack McQueen would have, the detailed analytics that are gun violence activities that involve crimes, you have already evaluated?
Again, the data haven't been evaluated on a comprehensive level, so I can't get specific in that way. But what I am suggesting is that once we have those data in front of us, the very people who would populate this commission, who are stakeholders, people who have some expertise, could make recommendations based on those data so that we know if, for instance, and again, I'm pulling this out of the air. I don't know, but if we were to find that the vast majority of instances of gun violence are related to, say, suicide, then when we do have an opportunity for a grant, we could put our resources toward that. If we find that no, actually it's related to youth issues, we can put it toward that, and so forth, and divide our resources proportionally based on data rather than let's try this, let's try that. And maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. The instance of the gun safes that I was suggesting is that if we discover, you know, the reason why we have X number of instances of gun violence is because they're related to stolen or lost weapons, or children having access to weapons that they found around the house, then maybe we do twice as many gun safes and fewer other things, or we put our resources proportionately more toward that.
Just thinking about how this would flow. I mean, if this group is setting aside and questions to obtain this information, just thinking of it like a flow chart, would go, for example, to the McLean County Mental Health Coordinating Group that our Mayor Pro Tem sits on. You know, we have the crime statistics, and again, fortunately, the stories of each of those, because the numbers are so small, are known to us. So that is an existing source already. So I'm just thinking about, like, what would be the unique primary research that would be additive to that versus, you know, just, you know, having an individual even who I understand, you know, maybe there are folks here at the universities who have an interest in this, may already be looking at or could simply look at as a specific assignment, as opposed to taking up staff time at a fully loaded labor rate hour, Open Meetings Act, going through all the FOIA training, everything else that would be layering on and taking taxpayer resources in support of. If there's an easier, better, faster way to get to the answers to your question, is a commission the solution for it?
Again, I think those data are scattered, and I think that at this point, we need some mechanism to pull them together. We haven't done that yet. And this would be a mechanism to pull them together and have the stakeholders who have the expertise, not just to analyze data, but to make recommendations about how to use those data and then bring those recommendations to us as a council.
Okay, thank you. I think you had motion before, right? Sorry. You looked at me, but. Oh, okay. I can't see the light. Okay. All right. Okay, go ahead and then I'll get to you. Yeah, okay, go ahead. Oh, this system over here, sorry. I'm still getting used to it. Why do you guys do that to me?
Got to use the tools.
Yeah, yeah.
So I want to just make a couple comments. One, Alderperson Ward is absolutely correct. One is too many. And I think if we look at all of our goals up here, we all would love to see a community where we take the right actions to reduce the amount of gun violence down to zero, including suicide. We all want to see that. In the idea of pulling all these different stakeholders together to assess the data, I think that's a great idea. I sit on the Criminal Justice Committee, and I mention that carefully because I know we've mentioned very truthfully that the suicide piece is not criminal. But all the people that sit in that room and the Criminal Justice Coordination Council meetings, you've got the parole board, you've got the mental health people, you've got the Junior Juvenile Justice Committee, you've got PATH, you've got all of these organizations that are the right people to hit every angle of this already talking. And you have Dr. Beck and his team from ISU and the Stevenson Center, as well as other contributors from outside universities that are also funneling data in. I believe we can use those efforts. Maybe it's a request to Judge Costigan to say, hey, can you look at this from this angle in your next focus? Right now they're looking at recidivism as a way to reducing recidivism and using that to reduce violence and improve the lives of those that have committed the crimes and hopefully keep them from going back down that path. But I think that using that vehicle somehow probably gets us to the result that Alderperson Ward is pushing and that I think we all want faster. That's just my opinion.
Thank you. Councilmember Hendricks.
This may be redundant because I feel like we've walked around it a little bit, but I was going to ask related to the makeup of the committee, like who, maybe not specifics as to who do you see, but what sort of backgrounds, what do you think, what would be valuable to the committee of those who served on it?
Yeah, I think that many of them have already been named, the groups that would be drawn from. I would see this commission or task force, whatever we want to call it, not necessarily made up of individuals so much as made up of representatives of various stakeholders with some expertise on the issue. And so they would put forward names that deal with this more than just through one lens. And I think that also gets at the idea that Councilman Becker was just getting at. The commissions that already exist are busy. They've got other things going on. That doesn't mean they don't have expertise. I would definitely want to draw from that expertise, but the priority of this commission right now, not the next focus at some unknown time, would be on this particular issue.
Okay. Councilmember Boland, looks like you're.
Yeah, I'm one of those people that said it should go to the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council and the Behavioral Health Coordinating Council. They are advisory committees that facilitate community collaboration. The members are multidisciplinary experts, highly educated, with extensive experience. The mission statement for the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council is to foster collaboration, communication between the criminal justice agencies and partners who educate, inform, and explore best practices. Its charge is to provide fair and just outcomes, improve public safety, reduce recidivism, and responsibly use resources for the benefit of Mulkane County residents. Again, I question, when we're talking about use of resources, we're going to be talking about funding and where the funding would come. All these different initiatives from these groups have to rely on grants, so, it would be the same as what was presented. But these groups facilitate community collaboration. And it's between service providers, social services, major organizations, including the NAACP, Project Oz, YWCA Labyrinth, Center for Youth and Family Services, and I can go on and on. You can go to the McLean County webpage for membership, meeting minutes, all the strategic plans that these groups use. And it is data driven. All the information comes from ISU, Stevenson Center, and actually from Loyola University up in Chicago, Criminal Justice Department. So there is information out there, and it would be no effort at all for the graduate students under Dr. Beck to do this work. They're happy to do it. They love doing it. That's how they get their graduate degree. But anyway, the models that are being used also, they are initiatives that are reducing. The data is there, and the initiatives that are being used by the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council and the Behavioral Health Coordinating Council are based on the data. It's being done. The police department has a strategic plan. They are working on their goals constantly. I see this Bloomington Gun Violence Commission initiative as creating a silo. We don't need to create another silo. I see it as duplication of efforts that can actually be counterproductive on many levels. Focusing on Bloomington implies a lack of collaboration throughout the region. The lack of support from the town of Normal and the county, for whatever reason, speaks volumes to me. I just will not be voting in favor of this commission.
Are there other questions? Comments? Did you?
Yeah, I would simply say if all this is already out there and exists, how come we haven't done anything yet?
All right, so I think at this one, this is for discussion only, and I think we want to sort of try to get a consensus of whether or not to move this forward, right? Okay. So it's not really, we're in that weird space where it's not really a vote, but it's just kind of a.
Yeah, so if I could, the item already came before Cal and the majority of council decided to move it forward. It was a 5-4 vote. I was just looking at the minutes. And so tonight it would just be the consensus as to whether we should bring something back to move forward.
The consensus, the sense of the council feelings.
Just feelings.
Yeah. It's just, yeah, it's.
I propose that we move something forward.
Just make one additional comment.
Sure.
In preparing for this meeting and truly looking to try and understand this from why this would be helpful. And starting from that point, I mean, looking at across the layers of government in the US, from the federal and Department of Justice and groups like this that have existed in so many places across this country. What I wasn't able to find, I was able to find lots of plans, developing comprehensive plans and identifying tactics and things like that, similar to what has been taking place, a commitment to community policing, gun safes, etc. But I have not found any where the local commission, state commission, or federal commission move the needle on the outcomes. That's my concern with investing the time for another commission. I think we should leverage the groups that we already have.
Okay.
Mayor, if you wanted, we could do a simple, I'd like to hear more or not.
Okay.
And just kind of go round robin.
Okay. All right. Yeah, let's go around robin. We're gonna start with Ward 1. If I'd like to hear more or not.
I would like to hear more.
I don't need any more information.
I'd definitely like to hear more.
I don't need any more.
Keeping track.
I don't need any more information.
I'd like to hear more.
Me too.
I think I've heard what I need to hear.
I would like to hear, excuse me, I would like to hear more.
Okay, so I think I heard 5 who want to hear more and 4 that don't. Okay, all right. So we'll come up at the, when does this come up?
I was just going to leave it to Tim, but at the next council meeting, or what do you think?
That's where I was headed. Next council meeting next Monday. And then we'll follow the pathway of the council initiative that Alderwoman Ward presented.
Okay. That was good. Yeah, I think we're gonna move on now then to city manager discussion.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council. I think I have 5 slides, correct, Catherine? Got it. We do have some new hires. We have Kurt, that's a multidisciplinary inspector for ECD, Lynn, benefits coordinator for HR, Scott, support staff and finance, and Dexter as a laborer with Public Works. Next slide. Additional new hires, Greg, business manager for arts and entertainment. Aaron is a laborer for Parks and Rec. Hannah is a new public safety dispatcher. And Alex is a fleet equipment technician. Slide 3. Additional Whitney with the police department, Esteban with the police department, Lucas is a new hire with the police department, Alexis, entry-level police officer, and Derek is also an add to the police officer, or I'm sorry, to the police department. Next slide. Free lunchtime concerts, Withers Park, downtown Bloomington, June 21st. And that'll be Wednesday, and then the following Wednesday, 11:30 to 1. Typically very well attended. Next slide. Family float night at Holiday Pool will be, I'm gonna get sidetracked real quick. Can't wait for the float night at O'Neill Pool, but this will have to suffice for this year. June 23rd, 5 to 6:30, and I believe that would be this Friday. Was that it, Catherine? Couple of additional comments real quick. Tailgates and Tall Boys was this past week, and would like to report just some of the public safety numbers. No arrests were made, from the police department. And then on the fire side, they saw 17 patients, transported 10 from the grounds over the course of 4 days. This compared to last year, 44 patients, 29 were transported over 3 days. Weather could have played into this as Chief West shared. So very good, don't know what the total numbers are yet, but we'll be reporting back on that as well. But from a public safety standpoint, it went extremely well over the course of the 4 days. And then an update on the conversation last week on the project labor agreement. It was attached to the Coachman development. But my pledge to the community on the project labor agreement and prevailing wage conversation, the next steps that I set in motion is finalizing a survey that's going to go to the business and developer community and also to the individual laborers and their business agents. So definitely more to come, but I wanted to share that with council and the community. Thank you.
I don't think we have any other items, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to,
Okay, motion by Councilmember Bolin, second by Councilmember Becker. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Even the audience said aye.